Hello and welcome to the very first NewsOK, OK Prep's Varsity podcast. I'm Scott Wright of the Oklahoman, joined by my fellow high school sports writers here at the Oklahoman, Jacob Unruh, Trent Shaded. Guys, our first podcast ever. I know we're fired up. We got some big guests lined up later to talk some 3A football with Heritage Hall coach Andy Bogert, Michael Swisher of CoachesAid.com and the Kingfisher newspaper. So we've got a lot to go here in this first podcast. Let's begin by looking backwards though a little bit. We were all out at a couple of games over the weekend. Trent, let's start with you. You saw a couple of teams we're going to talk about later, Norman North and Westmore. But let's talk about the other two teams that you saw in action over the weekend. You saw UConn take a loss, and as well as Southmore. Start with UConn and what stands out to you about that program in Bill Young's first year.
Yeah, a 42-28 loss to Norman North, which is nothing to be ashamed of. Norman North, number 3 in 6A1, a really strong team. Like you said, we'll talk about them later. But I felt like UConn's offensive line really controlled things, did a great job. Without losing 3 fumbles, that's a completely different game. You lose by 14 points and lose the turnover battle 3-0. That's kind of the thing you look back on. But their quarterback, Christian Gordon, was able to rush for 200 yards. That's incredible against one of the top teams in 6A1, and then Hunter Sconce, who is sort of a running back, wide receiver for them, he also had a great game, found the end zone a couple times. So and I think the biggest thing to me was UConn was pretty frustrated with it. They expected to compete with Norman North, and they expected to be on the field down to the last play, and so. I think that's a big thing is that Bill Young's kind of changing the expectations and that they expect to win.
You've seen Southmore 2 weeks in a row at this point. What's going on with those guys? Obviously, a coaching change. They're using a couple of different quarterbacks. Where do you see Southmore right now?
Yeah, after having seen them 2 straight weeks now, the defense has been solid. They've given up 20 points in both games, but it's kind of been more of a product of they've been on the field the whole game. Jeremy Starks, the new coach, he's a former defensive coordinator, so he really knows what he's doing on that side of the ball. He's geared the team a little bit towards relying on that, but the offense has struggled so much. It's really been tough for them to get going. They've been alternating returning starter Connor Usselton, who's just a sophomore, and then true freshman Casey Thompson, true freshman as if you can redshirt. His older brother had played at OU, transferred out to Utah. Some people might remember him. But he's they've just been alternating them, and I think they're kind of waiting for one to stand out so they can stick with one heading into district play, so hopefully they can make some noise. But 0-2 through 2 games because the offense has really struggled to get going.
Trent, you mentioned the quarterback battle. What are your thoughts on that battle? I know some people are kind of torn on it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I see where the coaches are coming from. It really is, they'll make plays and then they'll make a really bad mistake. I know Casey last week in the fourth quarter got rolling, had 3 straight completions, drives the team down the field. They're ready to cut it to 1 score against a really good Westmore team late in the game, and then all of a sudden he's flushed out of the pocket and just floats one in the end zone for an interception. Well, then when they come back out on the field, though, I kind of thought, hey, that's a learning experience for him. Send him back out there and see what he does. He was rolling before making that mistake. And then you pull him right after that and put Usselton in for the last drive, which was really meaningless anyway. The game was already out of hand. So it's kind of tough. I think you kind of kill the kid's confidence with that. But, they're coaching and I'm not. So we'll see what they decide to do.
Just really quickly, for people who haven't seen Casey Thompson in action. A lot of people have seen at one level or another Kendall Thompson, his older brother, and a lot of people remember watching his dad play, Charles, when he was at OU. So what type of player is Casey?
I mean, he's big time, especially for being just a freshman. He's a lot like Kendall. He can run, he can throw. He's got an impressive arm. I think he'll continue to develop into quite a player. And the thing about it is, if they decided to play Usselton, they could probably play Thompson at receiver and at safety, and he would be on the field for them. So they kind of got to pick one because they could use them both at other places. But I think Casey has big potential there.
One of the things that stands out about Southmore is their defensive front. They're going to have an interesting challenge this week with Edmond Santa Fe. Jacob, that's a team that you got a chance to see. Talk about particularly running back Darren Williams, but in general, what you saw from Edmond Santa Fe last week.
I've seen them 2 weeks straight now, and their offense has been impressive most of the time. Darren Williams especially, he's accounted for, I think, all but 2 or 3 of their offensive touchdowns and had 140 yards last week and a bunch of touchdowns. He's been very impressive now that he's the star back. Last year he split time and didn't really carry the ball a bunch. You had Farmer, you had Cameron Westbrook, you had guys like that ahead of him on the depth chart, and now that he's the guy, he's really seizing control of it, and it's been fun to watch because it's taken some pressure off Keaton Torrey, who has had his up and down moments, and but they're getting, you mentioned Southmore's defensive line being the key there. Edmond Santa Fe's offensive line has done a really good job both games, I think, for what they've had to deal with. They dominated more last week, and the week before they struggled at times with blocking players like Caleb Booz and David Wright, but a lot of 6A schools are going to struggle to block those two guys. They're animals on the outside linebacker, and but I really like what they're doing up front, and I think that's gonna be the interesting battle this week.
Just how good is this Edmond Santa Fe team? Because it's been tough to get a good gauge on them. I saw them in the preseason, and halfway through their mini game, I thought I've got these guys way underrated, and then they struggle in the second half, and I think, well, maybe I've got it pegged about right. How good do you think this team is or can be?
I think it could be really good. I think right now they're still figuring out how good they are themselves. It's a ton of juniors. Lance Manning keeps talking about all the juniors he has, and he does. He has Torrey, he has Williams, he has Williams' twin brother Dylan. He's got Calvin Bundage. He's got talented players over the field that are juniors, and I think that's going to lead to that question maybe not being answered till later in the season how good they are, because I think they're going to be so inconsistent. Because they had against Edmond North, they came out and jumped up to a 14-0 lead, and they let Edmond North back in and never put Edmond North away like they thought they could. And Edmond North ended up winning on a last-minute drive. And last week they got up to a big lead on Moore and then started letting them back in the game a little bit before they finally put their foot back on the gas and closed it. So I think it's still kind of up in the air on how good they really are.
All right, we'll take a step down in class now to talk some 3A football. We've got a couple of special guests going to join us to do that right now. We're joined now by Heritage Hall head coach Andy Bogert. Coach Bogert, thank you for coming on with us.
You bet.
Let's start with last week and the game against Clinton. You guys have really turned your focus strongly to the run game, and that came out and worked out really well for you against those guys. Talk about just the game in general and what's been working so well in the run game for you.
Well, I mean, I think obviously line has a little more experience this year. We're a little bit bigger up front. We've got 2 big backs. Terrell Love is probably 225 pounds, and Tevin McDaniel is probably 230 pounds. So you got a fullback-tailback combination, and then you have Connor McGinnis back there, who's extremely quick, and he's been making great decisions for us. So, we just made the decision early on when we started this year that we were going to get the ball to those guys, and it's worked out well for us.
Coach, talk about Connor and just his experience in this. You're able to run him. He can throw the ball too. Talk about his experience and what it means in that offense.
Well, you talk about his experience. We're playing Davis this week, and we're looking back at old film and stuff. And and you look back, Connor was a starter as a sophomore, starter as a junior, and this is his 3rd year. And I think that he's extremely confident right now. He's we run a little bit of an option game with our running game, and he's reading really well. That's always been his strength. But what's beneficial is now, as everybody starts to key on our run, figuring out we're going to run a little bit more, it opens up our passing game, and he's making really good throws. He made a couple of really good throws against Clinton last week.
Coach, you mentioned Davis this week. What kind of challenges do they present? It's a different kind of offense than you've seen so far this season.
Well, we get it once a year. We've had it every year, once a year, the wishbone. And I'll tell you what, they pack them in and they just come at you. It's an extremely patient offense. they'll keep running at you. I think their sole purpose is just to try to wear you out. And they just keep pounding, and you've got to have, it's triple option football. You've got to have every part of that covered, or they'll burn you in a hurry. You can tell. I think they've won probably 32 out of their last 33 games, something like that. So I think they pretty much perfected it as an art.
Now, Coach, you guys obviously play one of the more tougher non-district schedules in the state with Cassidy, Clinton, now Davis. Last year, I know you guys were really banged up through 2 games. Have you been able to stay more healthy this year?
Yes, we're knock on wood, but we're healthy this year. Last year, we started losing them in the scrimmages, and I think we'd lost 3 or 4 guys before we even had a game last year. And then by the time we got to Clinton, I think we had 9 out. So we're healthy and hope to stay healthy. I mean, that's going to be a big part of it, but it makes a huge difference when you've got the guys in there you started with. A huge difference.
Coach, Kingfisher lost last week, and 3A's landscape kind of changed with it. What are your thoughts on the way 3A is going so far this season?
Well, it looks wide open. You would think that Kingfisher would probably still be the favorite. I heard they had some guys banged up that didn't play the other night, so you would still think they'd be the favorite. And Douglas dropping down, obviously. I mean, very athletic team coming from 4A to 3A. You would think that they would be in the mix too. And then you've got Seminole, Victory Christian. When it comes down to it, the end of the year, I think it's going to be, wide open. I mean, probably any one of 10 teams could probably win it.
All right, Coach. Now, Jacob's 0 for 2 picking against you guys. He's gone against you twice, and it's come back to bite him. Do you think he needs to continue that trend to try to give you guys a boost down at Davis?
I think Jacob should very much pick Davis this week.
We'll see what happens. All right, how about that?
Okay.
Hey, thanks very much, Coach Bogert, for coming on with us. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Okay.
Let's move the show right along. We're joined now by Michael Swisher of the Kingfisher Times and Free Press, also of CoachesAid.com. Michael, we appreciate you coming on the debut podcast here with us.
Happy to be here, guys. Thanks.
All right, man. You were in the house for the Kingfisher Hennessy game that was one of the more surprising results of the second week of the football season. Hennessy takes that game 32-13. Talk a little bit about the flow of that game and what helped Hennessy be able to pull off that big upset.
Yeah, it was pretty much Hennessy from the start. Like you said, it was one of the more surprising results. I wasn't just blown away that Hennessy won. I was blown away by the fact that they, did it by such a wide margin and really dominated the game from the start. They took their second drive of the game and drove it down 15 plays, 81 yards, chewed about 7 minutes off the clock, and really that was just pretty much the tone of the game right there. And they were able to do that. They stopped Kingfisher's offense all night long. Kingfisher didn't score until 9:38 left in the game, and that was on a punt return. And its only other touchdown came on about a 37-yard drive after a short punt. So, Hennessy's defense really dominated Kingfisher, on the front lines, and the linebackers made plays. And then the offense, it made just enough big plays. It got a huge game out of Jose Sanchez. He caught 7 passes for 153 yards. The run game with Tabor Johns and Abe Ortega, it's a brutal run game to try to stop. And so, that kind of that run game is what set them up. They got a lot of great first down runs, so they had second and short a lot. And that allowed them to, really open up their playbook for second and third downs. And they just took advantage and really just took it to Kingfisher all night.
You tweeted something really interesting following the game, that this would benefit both teams in the long run. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, for Hennessy, they've done everything. This group of seniors, they've won a state title, they've won district titles. What they haven't done ever is beat Kingfisher. It's been since 1995. So, that was just a huge confidence boost for them to beat their county rival for the first time since most of them have been alive, to beat the defending Class 3A state champions, the number 1 team in Class 3A. So moving forward as they approach their district games, this is just something that, they can look back on and pull from and say, hey, we know we can play at that level because, despite the lopsided score, Kingfisher's still a really good team. So they know what they are capable of doing. So when the coaches say, we know you guys can go out and do this, they can pull from that. And it's for Kingfisher. They kind of needed an eye-opener. They've been dominant for the better part of 2 or 3 years now. This is their first regular season loss in over 2 years. And maybe got a little bit of a false sense of how good they really are. They're not as deep as they were last year. So, they had some holes to fill. And that big win over Woodward to start the year just kind of fed, into their beliefs. And it's still a really good team, but I think, maybe coaches can use this one and just kind of, dial it down a notch or, knock them down a few pegs and say, hey, guys, it's time to, really start listening to us again and doing the things that got us to being on top. We need to get back to where we were.
Now you mentioned Kingfisher being the defending state champs and number 1 there in 3A coming into that game last week. Taking a loss like that, how do you think they stack up against the best in 3A now?
Well, I think they're still, right up there. Hennessy's a really good team. You guys had them ranked number 3 in Class 2A and very deserving. I think they've moved up to number 2 now. So, they lost to a good football team, a really good football team. And I don't think it knocks them down in 3A much. Obviously Douglas is going to be a good team, and Victory Christian's good. Heritage Hall's better than they have been the last couple of years. There's a lot of contenders out there, but I think Kingfisher's right up there. They've got some holes to fill right now, and they're still figuring some things out. They lost a lot of good players from last year's title team, but they've still got a bunch of good players back, and I'd venture to say the fastest defense in Class 3A. So I think they still stack right up there with the best of them.
Hey Swish, you mentioned we do have Hennessy up to number 2 in our rankings this week. They've been viewed as a contender from the start. But what does this win say about them, and what this team might really be capable of this year?
Well, like I said, I mean, they can pull that one and say, they know that they can play at the top level. I don't know of any teams very few teams that can say they've been to the quarterfinals at least the last 7 years, and I think Hennessy can boast that. So, they know what it takes to win in the playoffs. These guys have been to the state championship game, and just taking this win right here, that kind of helps with the younger guys and saying, we can play at the absolute best level, and they've got some guys who have actually been there. So I think, obviously Davis and Millwood are, really good teams, but Hennessy, with their run game and their ability to throw the ball and some of the defenders they have, they're right up there with anybody in 2A in my opinion.
Michael Swisher of the Kingfisher Times and Free Press at coachesaid.com. Mike, we appreciate you coming on with us, man.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
See you, bud. Staying in Class 3A for the moment, I was out at the Soul Bowl, Millwood and Douglas. Millwood pulls off a little bit of a surprising upset there. Pretty impressive game from those guys, especially with everything that they're having to replace. Cameron Batson and all the seniors that they lost from a year ago. But Douglas is going to be really interesting to watch in that battle as they try to establish themselves as a legitimate 3A title contender. First year coming down from 4A. We'll see what they're able to do, but I think that 3A race is going to be really exciting. I love the Soul Bowl. I'm glad that I get to cover that every year. It's a blast every Saturday afternoon, the second week of the season, to go do that. One other big thing that happened on last Saturday was that Will Sunderland of Midwest City verbally committed to Oklahoma. He's been a top 5 guy in our Super 30 ever since we debuted this class's Super 30 back in February. Really big athlete, outstanding defensive player who has finally settled on Oklahoma as his college choice.
Scott, he had all kinds of offers all over the place, and I haven't seen him much. I saw him last year in week 1 against Santa Fe, and he made an incredible play on the goal line stand, and he came out of nowhere, and it was one of the more impressive plays I saw all season. How special is he of a talent? I mean, he's ranked 4 stars by a lot of recruiting services. How special is he?
He's an incredibly gifted athlete. He's around 6'3", 6'4", about 195 pounds. moves really well, really smooth back in the secondary as a safety. If there's any criticism about him, you'd probably like to see him come up and play the run a little stronger. But I think he's got the skills to do it. It's just a matter of developing that maturity as a safety, and he's been playing behind some defensive lines here the last this year and last year that worrying about the run hasn't been something that's been a real major concern for him. So he's been able to play his role as a safety and a cover guy. He's dangerous. He can return kicks and punts, and he's dangerous when he gets the ball in his hands. That's a big part of their offense this year is trying to use him in some wide receiver screen type situations, things like that. You got a big athlete like that, you might as well go get him the ball. So. It's going to be really interesting to see how he develops the rest of the year now that he's got this out of the way. He chose Oklahoma over Ohio State and really a long list of other colleges that were interested in him. So we'll see how he's able to keep pushing himself. Now that the recruiting process is over, not get too complacent with things and keep driving because Midwest City wants that gold ball in 6A2, and they're. I think they've got the potential to be the best defense in the state. They didn't necessarily look like it at all times in week one in that loss to Tulsa, Washington. We'll see what they're able to do. Another defense that's really stepping up and looking pretty impressive is Edmond Memorial. Jacob, I know you've seen them. I'll get to see them this week when they take on Mustang. Talk about what makes that defense so unique.
It's been impressive to see because they graduated so many talented players off of it last year, but their defensive line was still really impressive the other night with Courtney Williams and guys around him, and linebackers are good with Jason Hand and Zeke Mammon, whose brother graduated off the defense last year. They really did a good job of attacking and really getting in the backfield and kind of wreaking some havoc on Edmond North's offense that didn't have Stephen McClernand at quarterback, who was the hero of the week before, but the quarterbacks that did replace him didn't have a lot of opportunities to really make things happen. Edmond North rotated a lot of running backs and never could get going. They were just struggling. And I think it's been impressive to see that. I know I didn't get to see him in week one against Southmore, but to shut out an offense like that and then to shut out Edmond North, and now they get an offense like Mustang, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with those kind of skill players coming at them all the time.
That's going to be the big question, is whether Mustang can get the ball out to those guys. You've got David Parkridge, Colby Long out there for Chandler Garrett to throw to, and but the big issue for Mustang will be blocking up front. Stillwater was able to pull the upset over Mustang because they were in Chandler Garrett's face all night long and not giving him time to get the ball out to those guys, to his best playmakers. So that's going to be a big key on Thursday night in a game that I'm really looking forward to. Edmond Memorial right now number 5 in our rankings. Trent, the conversation of best in the West is a year-long topic until we get to the end and find out who it's going to be that's going to try to make a run at Jinx or Union. Edmond Memorial is going to be one of those teams in the mix. The top 2 right now are Norman North and Westmore. You've seen both of those teams, and they're going to be on the field going against each other. Tell us a little bit. What do you think? What do you think from those teams? And are these going to be one of the 2 teams going to be one of the best in the West?
I think they've definitely got a shot. They're kind of similar teams in that Norman North at number 3, great offense. John Kolar, probably the best quarterback in the state, maybe the best offensive player in the state. Headed to OSU. He's been tremendous. He last year, week 5, he comes in from receiver, takes over at quarterback for now Alabama freshman David Cornwell, and I was looking at his stats since that time. He's got 20 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's just been remarkable. He's got 5 touchdowns, no picks through 2 games this year. And then he's got a great running back receiver guy in Quan Hogan, who they use a lot. He's a big play, explosive guy. He had a 78-yard touchdown return to open the game against UConn last week. So he just makes things happen for them. And then on the other side for Westmore, they've got a great quarterback in Bryson Lee. I don't know how he translates to a college prospects, doesn't have any offers yet, but he really makes things happen for him, running and throwing the ball. And he's got a big-time receiver in Dahu Green, who's committed to Louisville. They had a couple huge 30, 40-plus yard pass plays on a big touchdown drive that helped them put that game away against Southmore. So, both teams were really a lot to handle on the offensive side. The other side of the ball, kind of an unknown. They definitely have some flaws, so it's yet to be seen if they can match up, with those Tulsa area powers of Jinx and Union this year. But I think those are the top two candidates along with Edmond Memorial.
I mean, you've seen Memorial as well. Obviously, a different type of team than Westmore and Norman North because they're more defense oriented. They've obviously got an outstanding playmaker in Warren Wand, who's coming off of an injury-filled off season, but getting close back to being fully healthy. Where do you think they stack up right now as compared to those two?
I would still put them just a little bit behind, but only because Southmore and Edmond North don't necessarily appear to be blowing people away with their offense. You shut those two teams out, that's impressive. Jacob was saying Edmond North, was struggling to even get a first down. I don't even think they had one heading into the fourth quarter. Had negative yards offensively. Mm-hmm. But I just think there's so much offensive firepower for Westmore and Norman North right now that I would give them the slight edge. But I'm really curious now and intrigued to see what Edmond Memorial will do.
All right, guys, we're all going to be out at a couple of games this week. Let's just go around the table and talk about where we'll be. I'll start. I'll be at Wantlin Stadium for Edmond Memorial and Mustang on Thursday night. Friday night, I'm going to head down to Davis for that big Heritage Hall Davis game. Jacob, where are you going to be this weekend?
Thursday night, I'm going to check out Choctaw at Putnam North. I'm really interested to see what's going on with those two teams. Choctaw's off to a really good start. Jonah Lanusa should be fun to see. And then Friday, I'll get to see Del City at Midwest City. So I finally get to see Will Sunderland and for a second time, and I'm really excited about that matchup. I think it can be really good, depending on how Terry Wilson plays, too, for Del City.
Trent?
Now, I'll be at Moore Stadium Thursday and Friday night. Thursday, we'll have Norman at Moore, Coach Paul Hicks at Moore looking for his first win there. And then Friday night, the big one, as we mentioned, kind of battle for West Side supremacy here early in the season between Westmore and Norman North. Should be a fun shootout there.
You going to get a room at Moore Stadium for the night?
I might as well.
Might as well. I mean, they're going to order you in Chick-fil-A, you know that.
Right,
so
it's great.
You're gonna be set up. So
it really is.
All right, so we have all of those games covered and then some. Stick with newsok.com/varsity. We'll have all the updates, all the scores. If you haven't checked out our new app, you want to be sure and get that. The Varsity Stats app will have all the updates popping right on your phone as fast as we can get them to you. So be sure and go check that out in the iPhone App Store and stick with us. We'll be updating you as much as possible on Twitter. Online and with our live articles, have some video. We'll live stream a game this weekend as well. So plenty of coverage from newsok.com/varsity. Thank you for joining us for the very first OK Preps Varsity podcast.